Right, we have one more candidate for you all to meet. This is Russ Ford. He is our candidate for Brazos County Commissioner that we have endorsed. Russ, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paul.
Absolutely. So, a really cool thing, and I think that really gives you a unique perspective, is that you have chosen to live in Curtin rather than on the outskirts of Bryan College Station, and you have, I believe that you have owned that land since 1984.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what drew you to the country, and what is the best part of living out in that direction?
Paul, I'm going to give you a rather lengthy answer here. What I'm going to tell you is that when I graduated A&M in '82, I started right then looking for property here. I knew this was exactly where I wanted to live and raise my family. So I was able, it took almost 2 years to find that little piece of property out in Curtin, which we just love. At that time, Democrat Road was not even a paved road. And our property was totally raw land. There was nothing there at all. So if you can imagine, life changed and moved away, met my bride, and we actually, during the 80s, had to live in Houston out in Cypress for a short period of time. And a sad part of the story, but in the subdivision we lived in, there were two 13-year-old girls that committed suicide within just weeks of each other. It really shook my wife and I up, and we got to thinking about our family and what we wanted them to grow, how we wanted them to grow up. We've got 3 daughters, and honestly, Vicki grew up in a small town in Brownwood, Texas, but she had a hometown. And I grew up in Waco, and I had a hometown. It was just a lovely place to grow up and go back to. I choose to live here, but we chose to move back to Bryan College Station. Well, I already had the property out at Curtin, but my wife was a city girl. She had never lived out in the country, and because of our life situation, I had built a small cabin out there, only about 1,000 square foot, and for a year, because housing was hard to come by on short notice at that time, we moved our whole family into a 1,000 square foot cabin for a year. But Vicki is such a lovely person. She turned it into like a camping trip. Like, we would have breakfast out on the patio every morning, you know what I'm saying? And just this wonderful kids playing and all that. Of course, part of the reason that we wanted to move back here was actually the schools. And I know that a lot of people feel like College Station is the very best school district, and it is. My middle daughter teaches there now. But Bryan has some interesting attributes to their school system. One is they offer an international baccalaureate program, and their advanced student programs are very good. So we felt like our kids didn't lose a thing by going to Bryan School. So we got to live out in the country, but they got to be a part of a bigger school district, which had more offerings as far as athletics. And actually, one of them played in the band, one of them was in the choir, and the third one played violin. So we felt like they all got their own thing by living in Bryan College Station. But if you can imagine living in the country now, Vicki, like I say, didn't think she wanted to stay out there. We were going to move to town just the next year when we could find suitable housing, and she fell in love with it just like I do. We are such funny people, but we actually love watching the sunsets out there, and we do have some beautiful sunsets here in Bryan College Station. So we'll sit out in the evenings and watch the sunsets. It's just a magnificent. It's a very small piece of property, Paul. It's only about 30 acres, but it's about all that you can manage when you've got both of you have full-time jobs and all that. So yes, our grandchildren now. They love coming out to the country. They live in the woodlands, but they call it Camp Curtin when they come to visit us. We're such funny grandparents. We built them a small, we call it a dollhouse, but it's a little Victorian cottage, with double doors, kid size, and that sort of stuff. And we had so much fun finishing that thing out. We were like two builders. Vicki watches Fixer Upper on TV.
Oh, yeah.
And so we've got a Fixer Upper dollhouse, if you can imagine.
That's awesome. And that's an experience, especially for young children, if they're not used to the country. I mean, that's like
Oh,
That's
they
when
feed
we,
the cows with me. You know what I'm saying? They just love it. It's a
yeah.
great experience for them.
Well, before we moved here, we lived in Kyle. And so our son would go to the ranch, which is
Yeah.
out in the Gonzales area. And so we'd say, Cullen, do you want to go to the ranch this weekend? He'd get all excited and he'd
I
say,
did,
yeah,
yeah.
let's go to the ranch. And so now we live just down the road from you towards Tabor. And we've got 20 acres and there's animals everywhere and stuff. And now he lives in that. And so it is a really cool experience when you're little, because I grew up in a small town, but I didn't have any experience with living on land. And so I definitely can,
You
there's
living
a
in
lot of us that can connect to that.
Tabor, you understand, we've got all of the benefits and all the amenities of living close to town, but you can sort of get away from it. And you know this, it's usually very quiet out in the country. You know, I think our noise difference is like 35 decibels to 70 in some places in town. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the things when you answered your questionnaire, you talked about that living out in the county, and then, kind of talked a little bit too about, property taxes. So property taxes it's a conversation we've had, I think, probably with every candidate that we've interviewed and talked with. And you talked a little bit about, rising property taxes and issues that can come from that. How's your personal experience shaped your views on the property tax system as a whole? And then, has your personal experience living in the country shaped, your views and thoughts on real estate issues, maybe eminent domain or other types of annexation, things that might affect those that live out in the edge of the county?
yeah, help me remember to get back to eminent domain at the end, Amy, because I don't want to forget that. That's very important to me. But what I will tell you is our county taxes are reasonably low. It's not like we live in a super, but we also don't have quite as many amenities or the quality of county roads and bridges that other counties, more wealthy counties might have. What I believe with all my heart, I think I told you, Amy, that I'd served on the BCAD board of directors for a period of time as the county's representative. I think that the way that we assess our taxes is fair. In other words, I don't think that they single me out as opposed to some other citizen. However, what I believe is even if the county lowers the tax rate, but if they raise my assessment or my
Value,
my value 25%, my net taxes still go up. What I pay at the end still goes up. And I just recently went through a protest hearing on my two houses that are out there on the same adjacent piece of property, and was very successful in that hearing. They listened to what I said, and what living in the country is you make certain choices by living in the country that we're not going to have the high-speed internet service that the kids in town might have to do their schoolwork. Or pay for satellite internet, pay $163 a month and still have about a fourth the bandwidth or the speed that you get in town.
Mm-hmm.
But in all honesty, the comps that they used to value my property were houses in town in the Bryan School District, and it's just not the same. So I feel like they were very reasonable and they listened to what I had to say, and I was successful. But I encourage people to use that. In other words, if they raise your value on your property 25% and you don't see that the other property in the area has gone up that much, use that process, because it worked for me at least this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and that's something that a lot of people go through. And especially we have, a lot of realtors that have investment properties in town, and they go with the whole portfolios to appeal every single year and go through the process. And it's good we have that process. And so you wanted me to remind you about eminent domain. So
let me go back to that process one more time.
Okay,
What I did learn during my time on the BCAD board of directors is that the larger property owners or portfolio owners, as you stated, they make a regular practice of doing exactly what you and I are talking about, and they always get a more reasonable assessment on their properties after going through that. So I encourage an individual homeowner. Yes, it's a little bit frightening to go down there, but they're just regular people, and the appraisal district is not your enemy. You know, it's not like they're mean, bad people. They'll give their side, and then you give your side of the story. So back to that eminent domain question that I wanted you to help me with. Living in the country, and my family is owned land, farmland up in Falls County and also out in Dickens County, almost to Lubbock. I work for an engineering company, Amy, and I think I told you about this already, but we just finished a project in Kerr County where the county was actually going to supply wastewater service to all of its citizens out in the county. A real good deal. I believe that was driven by how expensive septic systems are in that county with their soil and everything.
Yeah.
But we were able to acquire over 700 parcels without using eminent domain. And what I'm going to tell you is that did require some realignment of the system and everything. So I don't just believe eminent domain is evil. However, I think it should be used only as a last resort. In other words, if you've got numerous landowners down in alignment, whatever it is, that do not want to sell land, change the alignment. You know what I'm saying? And negotiate with those people, and also pay them more than fair market value. If it's a family farm and you're going to cut right down the middle of it, for example, it's worth more to them than it would be just the price of the raw land. It's got other intrinsic value. So I don't say that we should never use eminent domain or condemnation, but I do believe it should be a last resort. And I personally don't like it, if you know what I'm saying. I recognize there may be a need at some point in times, but you've got to be very, very careful in using that.
Yeah, definitely. And I moved into the area, and sister church from where I came from said, oh, they recently had their building purchased through eminent domain. And I was bracing myself because you hear a lot of stories that aren't positive. Well, it ended up they got treated very, very fairly in the situation. I was very glad to hear that. But there are definitely situations that, especially Texas realtors, we've talked about for years, that where it's not been very fair for people. So we're pleased to hear your point of view on that.
It's interesting, but what I will tell you, we thought we were going to have to on that Kerr County project. There was one family there's one parcel that had 7 heirs. And more than one of the heirs was incarcerated, was actually in prison, and wouldn't sign or couldn't sign, had no desire to sign. The majority of the family wanted to. So we thought we were really going to have to. We were able to finally get through negotiation, get that taken care of. But I'm serious. I think that whatever entity or agency it is should go well beyond even what would be considered reasonable and prudent to try to work with landowners.
Yeah. Russ, we really like talking to you today, and this has been a very good conversation for us, and I think for our members too. We've been asking everyone just kind of give a 30-second elevator pitch for why realtors, in this case, in the entire county, should support your candidacy. Just 30-second elevator pitch. What's the
I'm a big talker, Adam, so 30 seconds might be the 45. But I'll tell you the 3 things that come to mind.
Like an elevator for a couple floors.
Yeah, you go an extra floor with me.
Extra floor, yeah.
The realtors are truly have their finger on the heartbeat, on the pulse of our community. They know where Bryan and College Station is headed. And I believe that we are about to experience some tremendous growth here. We previously have been a rural county, or somewhat rural county with a big university, and I think we're becoming much more urban. And with that, you've got to have a vision. You've got to plan for that upcoming growth. And I think the realtors know that and see that, so they should be looking for candidates that are willing to help Brazos County grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
My campaign treasurer is a realtor, by the way, or his wife's a realtor.
Yeah, Mr. Ruffino.
Very nice. Well, Russ, we thank you for your time this morning, and we are excited to get out and share the word. And we wish you the best of luck on Election Day.
Thank you.